Good morning, everyone. It is Friday, April the 16th, 2021. It is currently 11:14 a.m. Central Time. I'm here at Victory Baptist Church located in Ovalo, Texas. I'm not going to play our intro. I'm not going to do anything like that. I just want to turn on this microphone and have a serious talk with you. I want you to listen carefully. I want you to participate in the conversation by all means. You can email me at newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. I will read every email. Also, feel free, if you're listening to me live, to give your thoughts and ideas and opinions in the chat. I'll be more than happy to respond there as well. But we have another... I don't even know how to start. We have a number of situations where we have the police involved in a shooting, all right, where an individual has been shot, where an individual was shot and killed by police. We have a number of situations. And here I'm not going to name each. I'm not going to name each police officer. I'm not going to name I'm not going to name the individuals who were shot because I don't want to get into all of the details of each shooting. I don't want to get into that right now. If I start naming the situation, and then as soon as I don't, if I don't say this or I don't say that, or if I don't offer this perspective or this perspective, then everyone will just focus on, oh, well, you mentioned that shooting, but you didn't mention that this is what the person was doing before they were shot, or you didn't mention that the police did this, or you didn't mention this, and it'll turn into that, and that will cloud what I really want to talk about in this particular episode. I am not saying that all of those issues should not be talked about they should all be talked about in their own episode, all right? I'm not saying they should not be discussed. I'm saying in this episode, my focus is very specific here, all right? Here's what happens. You know this, I know this. Anytime a police shooting occurs, it almost seems within seconds, competing narratives are generated and then everyone operates from that narrative. Like it's like, here's the narrative and you can only think about this shooting from that perspective. Nobody wants to stop. Nobody wants to think. Nobody wants to listen to both sides. Nobody wants to take even into consideration a human being was killed. It's all becomes about, here's the narrative and then defend the narrative. Defend the narrative. Speak the narrative instead of going, wait a minute here. Let's look at this carefully. Let's listen to every side. Let's be slow to speak. Let's be careful that we don't speak and give an answer until we've heard the entire matter. No, everyone immediately takes to social media, takes to anywhere and everywhere, throws out their thoughts, throws out their opinions, and then they move on. In many cases, never even to come back to find out if their initial understanding was correct. People don't care about understanding. People don't care about truth. And sadly, in many cases, they don't care about the fact that people die. What they care about is their narrative. What they care about is their side. And that doesn't accomplish anything. That just creates division and fighting. But it becomes very frustrating and very tiring. And you know the way it works. All right, the police shoots someone, right? Maybe they're unarmed, whatever the case may be. There's a police shooting that becomes controversial, all right? And I'm trying to be very careful about which words I use because I'm trying to avoid giving any words to speak of a specific situation, because then I'll have to give all of the details of each individual situation, and then we'll have to discuss all of the different aspects to each situation. What I'm trying to say is whenever a police shooting occurs, immediately certain narratives are generated, and you know how it works, all right? You have the pro-police narrative, right? Where they will either try to excuse what the police was doing. You don't know how difficult it is to be a police. You don't know how difficult it is to be a police officer. You don't know what it's like to be at 2:00 in the morning and in a situation. You don't know, they have a split second to react. And so they start trying to be the pro-police. You don't know how difficult it is. And look at what the person was doing. Look at what they were doing. I mean, why were they doing that? If they didn't do this and they didn't do that, they would have never been shot. If they didn't do this and didn't do that, never been shot. If they wouldn't have been out at 2:00 in the morning driving a car, they never would have been shot. If they would have had their driver's license ready, they never would have been shot. If they didn't have a warrant out for their arrest, they would never be shot. It just starts. They look at everything from the basically being from a pro-police perspective, right? Somehow the police has to be, they can't be guilty here. They can't be held responsible. I mean, you got to give them the benefit of the doubt, and it's a very pro-police narrative. And you can't deny that exists. It shows up almost instantaneously. On the other side, almost instantaneously, a anti-police narrative begins. Well, obviously they did this because they're racist. Obviously this is racism. Obviously they did that to that person because of the color of their skin. Obviously they did it on purpose. Obviously that's what they intended to do. Obviously they're just out there killing people. And so you start with a very anti-police narrative, right? And then they blame everything the police does. And they don't want to talk about anything that the other individual did. Like whoever got shot, they don't want to talk about what they were doing. No. The person who was shot was great, good, perfect, wonderful. And they almost typically they don't go maybe that far, but they'll say it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It was the police. They're racist, this. And you end up with these basically two competing narratives. Now, of course, there's all kinds of variations there. You get the idea. Obviously, I'm not trying to go through every opinion of every thought of every person who tends to go with one of these narratives. But the narratives get generated. And once the narratives get generated, it's like everyone gets the memo. Here's the memo. This is how you think about this. This is how you understand this situation. This is how you speak about this situation. And sadly, nothing of value comes from all of the arguing and yelling. And then it can lead to protest and to violence. And the cycle just continues. Shooting occurs. Everyone runs to their narratives. Everyone yells from their narratives. And nobody stops to go, wait a minute. First, let's look at each situation individually. Let's look at every single aspect of it. Let's look at what the police did right. Let's look at what the police did wrong. Let's look at what the victim may have done right. Let's look at what the victim may have done wrong. Let's look at the fact that we're watching this on a video that we've replayed 37 times and we've slowed it down, every single time so that we can see every step of every section frame by frame. And then we can sit there and judge going, well, this is what they should have done. And this is what I would have done. No, it didn't occur over 30 minutes of you stopping and looking at every frame. It occurred in seconds. It occurred in a minute, whatever the case may be. You have to at least consider that. You have to consider that. In other words, every shooting has multiple layers. And what you're doing is you're judging those layers through the benefit of being able to look back at the situation. In other words, you get to look back. You get to look at everything, and then you get to make the judgment from the safety of your chair, from the safety of your couch while you're on your phone, right? So you get to sit there and go, it's amazing how we can always look back to the past and our vision is 2020. Right? When you look back, the vision's always 2020. Hey, they should have done this. They should have done that. Well, why didn't he lift up his arms? Why didn't he do this? Why didn't he do that? Why didn't she do this? Why didn't she do that? Why did the cop do this? Why? And because you're looking back. And when you look back, you can always have perfect vision. But when you're in the middle of the situation, it's very different. So you have to look at it. You have to take so many factors into mind, right? Okay, first of all, I got to see this in real time. All right, from the beginning of the situation to the end of the situation. How long did it take? How quick did they have to make the decision? All right, I can't say what I would do in that situation. Never been in that situation, right? Unless you've ever been in that situation, it would be very hard for you to be dogmatic about it. I can sit there and say, well, they should have done this. They should have done this. And you can make all kinds of determinations, but you realize you have the benefit of looking back. You have the benefit of all of that there. Now, so we always have to be very careful and to understand that we're looking at situations that have multiple layers and each part has to be considered. You got to consider every aspect of it. You got to realize how it took place in real time. You got to try to figure out what was going on before. For example, I always say that when these things happen, I need to even go back and consider, all right, what was the dispatch call? In other words, when the police received the call from dispatch and they said, okay, we need you to go to this location, what was the call? Someone acting suspicious? Or the call was someone has a gun? All right, that changes because when the cops get there, they're going to think, oh, the person has a gun. I've got to at least take that into consideration. I'm not saying that should be used to make excuses. I'm saying that we have to look at the totality of the situation. All right, so when the cops got the original call, so when they arrive, they're going in with what idea in mind? That they're dealing with an armed suspect? Okay, that's going to change maybe the way they think and the way they act. I think that's logical. That's not making an excuse. That's not saying a shooting was justified. That's saying I've got to take that into consideration. All right. What was visibility like? Was it 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning? Okay. If it was 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, how well what was their visibility? Were they able to see? That has to be taken into consideration. All right. What did the suspect do or did not do? That has to be taken into consideration. I'm not saying it excuses anything. See, when I start trying to explain this, everyone jumps to their narrative. Forget your narrative. Just look at each aspect, right? And then when you're done, you can go, okay, that's my conclusion. Now, what you hope is that ultimately it's handed over to a justice system that will look at it carefully, fairly, according to the law, and a fair decision will be made based off the law. That's what you hope. Is it going to work perfectly? No. Why? Because we live in an imperfect world with an imperfect system. But you at least want to look at all of the layers. And guess what? You want to look at each layer, no matter if it goes with your supposed narrative or against your narrative. Your narrative is irrelevant. You just want to find out the truth. So the first thing we have to do is always try to find out what are the facts, and you gather every bit of evidence that you can. You look at it if you're going to be making a decision about it, looking at every video angle, look at it everything. The dispatch call, witnesses. You take everything into consideration before you jump to any conclusions. We have to think things through. But the narratives immediately get created. And once the narratives get created, then nobody cares about truth. And that is problematic. And it becomes so disheartening the way it can work. You know what I'm saying? It's like it immediately becomes about race because we got to know the race of the individuals involved. Even though we don't know if race was even a motivating factor, we don't know if race had anything to do with it. It could just be poorly trained police officer, lost discipline, was scared. I mean, so many factors could come into play. It may not have a thing to do with race. Maybe it did. So, I mean, maybe I'm not saying you'd overlook the racial component. I'm saying, but it doesn't mean that there's any proof that that's the primary cause for it. I can just go on and on and on. There's so many factors to be considered. We have to look at all of it. We cannot jump to conclusions. But here's something as Christians we must do. We must realize that a human being was killed. A human being died. That should always bother us. We shouldn't just try to seek to justify it. It should always bother us that someone had to die. Even if it ultimately determined that it was a justified shooting, it was a good shoot. That doesn't mean that it's wonderful. Oh, good, our side won. Woo, no, someone died. That's not good. A human being created in the image of God died and entered into eternity. That's never a positive thing. I guess if they're a Christian and they go to heaven, I guess you could say it's positive, but a human being was killed. And so we have to always think these things through. There's so many layers to these issues. And just when I see these shootings right now, that's what you're seeing. Everyone's got, this and everyone's got that. And I understand that it's easy to go to that. Just look at each one. And guess what you should want? You know what you should want? You want the truth to come out, and you want justice to happen no matter if it goes with your side or against your side. Here's the thing. I shouldn't be pro-cop, anti-cop. I should just be pro-truth. Pro-truth. And guess what? When there's a problem with cops not handling themselves in a correct fashion, it needs to be called out. It needs to be pointed out. And we also have to take into consideration experiences. Look, I've never been an African American growing up in a big city. I don't know what it's like. I don't know what interaction with police are like. I cannot speak to that perspective. Who am I? I'm a white guy who grew up in Buffalo Gap, Texas, for crying out loud. Population, 287 people? Give me I grew up in the mean streets of Buffalo Gap, Texas. I mean, woohoo. I mean, man, South Side. Yeah. I mean, did we have a South or North? We didn't even have a side. It was just Buffalo Gap. Okay. I mean, give me a break. East Side, West Side. What? There was none. I didn't grow up in the mean streets of anywhere. So it's ridiculous for me to try to understand the perspective. Why do they act a certain way when the cops tell them to do something? I can't speak to that. And the case that maybe there's something, a cultural reason, a reason in that neighborhood. Maybe there's something. Their experience is so different than mine. I cannot speak to it. I've got to take that into consideration. There's all kinds of issues beyond my ability to understand. Now, for my own personal experience, what I have experienced, I've experienced a couple of things dealing with police officers. I've told the story when I was in Iowa, Council Bluffs, Iowa, on a Friday night, whatever it was, and my passenger was African American, and we get pulled over, all right? And the cop, instead of walking to my window, they walk to the passenger window, and then they tell him to roll down the window, and they start referring to him as boy. They keep shining the flashlight in his face, and they're almost like trying to provoke him. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen in my life. And then I start getting mad. They basically tell me to be quiet. They tell me the reason I was pulled over was running a red light, which is an absolute 100% lie. We stopped completely. In fact, we thought about turning in at the convenience store that was right there next to the light, and then we turn a right on a red. Then they tried to tell me that it was illegal to turn a right on a red, even though there was no sign there. And obviously it was legal to take a right on a red there. So they made up all kinds of excuses, but their focus was on the passenger, who happened to be an African American male. To this day, I was so shocked. I'd heard about that kind of stuff, but I never believed. I was kind of, I think they kind of exaggerate that stuff. I think those have to be exaggerations, but I witnessed it. And that changed my perspective ever since. The minute I witnessed it, that changed my perspective. I can't imagine. I don't know what people's experience are. I know here in West Texas, when we were teenagers, there was a highway patrol officer. I don't remember his name, but he was famous for doing this on Friday and Saturday nights. He would run up on your car, like coming as fast as he could, get right up on your bumper, then boom, throw on the bright lights. Well, immediately you'd be like, what is this jerk doing? And you would speed up. And as soon as you took off, he would turn on the lights, pull you over, and give you a ticket for speeding. Happened to my friends. I was in cars where it happened. Craziness. But hey, that's the police officer. So I'm not saying all police officers. I can't, from those experiences, say all police officers are racist or all police officers are bad. That would be wrong too. But I'm just saying your experience gives you a perspective that may explain something. It has to be taken into consideration. I'm not saying it makes it an excuse for anything. I am not. I am not saying it excuses anything. I'm saying that we have to be very careful about jumping to conclusions because there are narratives. Throw out the narratives. Throw out whether you're liberal or Republican. Throw out whether you're African American or white. Throw out all of that and just say, what is the truth? Now, I'm not saying we throw out the experience of an African American male growing up in an inner city. His interaction with cops may have given him a certain way of thinking. That has to be taken into consideration. I'm saying that as the one trying to judge what's happening, we've got to realize that there are a lot of factors, and we got to throw out all of our personal experiences, our personal feelings, and we got to get to the truth. And it's like nobody wants to do that. You can't. Whenever you try to have a rational conversation about one of the shootings, it just turns into, no, not the police's fault. No. Oh, wait. What did that person do in the past? What did that person do in the past? Oh, when that person was 22, they did something really bad with a gun. So they deserve to be shot. Well, they may not say they deserve to be shot, but they're throwing it out there almost as an excuse for why the person was shot. Doesn't matter what the person did yesterday. They're in an interaction with the police on that day. That their past failure should not lead to a shooting today unless they do something that warrants a shooting based off the legal requirements for the use of lethal force. Very simple and straightforward. When are you authorized to use lethal force? If it meets that criteria, then it meets that criteria. If you don't like that criteria, then we got to get the laws changed. Now, the same thing, listen, when the police shoot someone, same narratives are created. Let's make it very clear. Same thing can happen when police are shot, right? If you're pro-police, it's horrible. It's horrible. And if you're anti-police, it's almost sadly viewed as almost a good thing. Narratives are created no matter when a mass school shooting happens. Narratives are created. Turns into pro-gun people versus anti-gun people. It's always narratives. It's never, wait a minute. Okay, what happened here? Okay, let me get all the facts. Okay. All right, so what occurred? Okay, do we have any information about this? Do we know what led up to it? Okay, there's a video. When did the video camera start? Okay, it started right. Do we know how long the interaction had been going on prior to the beginning of this video? Okay, the video stopped right there. Did anything happen after the video stopped? Because I got a 2-minute video clip, and I hear that the interaction with the police lasted for 15 minutes. That's 2 minutes out of a 15-minute interaction. I need more details. I need more information. And that's the way it should be done. And guess what? We should just look for the truth and just be very careful what we say. Look, and a lot of the current shootings, I haven't spoken much. I've not gone into any details about them because I'm still waiting for all the details to come out. But sadly, even when the details come out, sometimes it goes this way. Everyone just grabs the evidence that supports their side. Well, what about this and what about this? Well, no, what about this and what about this? How about, wait a minute, a tragedy just took place. Someone died. And guess what? In an imperfect world, guess what happens? Imperfection is built into we're in an imperfect world. So guess what? You may find a situation where, that went right. Oh, that went wrong. Well, they did that right. Well, they did that wrong. Look, man. Oh, this is horrible. And it may just come out like it makes you sick to your stomach because there's no real clarity in it. It's just horrible. I want to just give you this. So just be careful with the narratives. Just be careful with the narratives. But I just want to show you how this plays out within the Christian world. Dr. James White, Alpha and Omega Ministries. I've had nothing but respect for Dr. James White. He's been very influential in my ministry and in my Christian life. Grateful for all that he has done. Over the last few years, he's become more and more political, which at times is troubling. He posted a tweet, thinking she was firing her taser. We will probably never know the identity of the cop who killed Air Force veteran Ashley Babbitt purposefully with a gun. Get used to the double standards. Whoa, wait a minute. Now, Tucker Carlson on Fox News has done the same thing. Hey, this Ashley Babbitt was shot, and nobody seems to care here. We don't get the identity of the police officer. Nobody cares about her. Okay, whoa, slow. There's so much going on here. Okay, let's just take this tweet apart. Do you find something interesting what he does here? He identifies the man who was shot as the black man who was fleeing and resisting. So for the man who was shot, he gives their race, and he gives what they were doing prior to the shooting. However, when it comes to the female who was shot, he gives her name, Ashley Babbitt, does not give her race, and does not tell you what she was doing prior to being shot. He tells us that she was an Air Force veteran. Okay, she was an Air Force veteran. Clearly, there's no reason she should have been shot because Air Force veterans never break the law. Air Force veterans never do anything wrong. And trust me, I'm an Air Force veteran, a disabled veteran. So make it very clear, that when people say the Air Force veteran, it's almost like you're playing the patriotism card. She was an Air Force veteran. She served our country. She shouldn't have been shot. But just note even how this is described. The black man doesn't even give the name of the black man. The black man's not even named. The black man who was fleeing and resisting. So we know his race and we know what he was doing. For the female, we get her name and we get the fact that she was an Air Force veteran. It's almost like she was just an Air Force veteran walking down the street and plop, boom, she got shot. No, she was Ashley Babbitt, who was stationed at the same Air Force base I was. In fact, I had some dealings with her when she came into the hospital, not personal, like I don't know her, wasn't friends with her, but I definitely knew the name immediately. But so she was shot and killed. Okay. She wasn't just walking down the street in uniform as an Air Force veteran serving her country. No, she had gone through barricades set up to keep people out, and she broke into the Capitol building, and she was trying to get into an area that had been, barricaded. She was trying to get through a barricade, and she was shot. Tragic, horrible. The whole thing on the Capitol riot was horrible, tragic. Violence, destruction, craziness occurred. Horrific. But so why didn't you say the woman who broke into the Capitol building, who was trying to get into a barricaded room, was shot and killed, who happened to be white? If you're going to say that the man who was killed, let's give his name, just referring to him as the black man who was fleeing and resisting. Well, if he was fleeing and resisting, she was trying to she had trespassed, broke into the Capitol building, trying to get into a barricaded room. Why is it not described that way? Because of narrative. I can't even believe that I'm reading that from supposedly a Christian apologist. What does it have to do with Christianity? He's humanizing the white woman, dehumanizing the black man. Because the black man, we don't even get his name. He's just fleeing and resisting. But the white woman, she's an Air Force veteran. Here's her name. Now, I'm not saying it was consciously done, but from a subconscious way, that is messed up. And then he says, get used to the double standards. How about your double standard here? Treat both of them. Both of them, if you want to say both of them, the one was resisting and trying to flee. If you're going to say, okay, he was engaged in criminal activity, he was engaged in criminal activity. Both individuals were engaged in criminal activity, and both ended up shot and killed. One was done by an accident. The other one was done on purpose. So just some of the immediate comments underneath this tweet, just so you see how people responded. Have you stopped the gospel apologetics, or is it just you trying out a different type of apologist stance? I'll keep checking in to refollow when we get more of what the Apologia team does best. Dr. White responded, so I do hours of teaching each week, but this somehow means I have to be silent on the blatant injustice being enshrined by enemies of the cross. Explain this to me. So blatant injustice. It's blatantly unjust that Babbitt was shot and killed. That was blatantly not just, but it was just, I guess, for the African-American man to be shot and killed. And enemies of the cross. So I guess the one who shot Ashley Babbitt was an enemy of the cross. I guess the one who shot the black man wasn't an enemy of the cross. Where are you going with this? So someone else responded, enemies of white cops who murder equal enemies of the cross. So enemies of white cops who murder equals enemies of the cross. All right. Now, I know what they're trying to say here. Who are you making the enemy of the cross? So they go on to say, so it's impossible to murder someone who's already been tried and convicted. Now, if you want to substitute summarily executed for murder, then you may be closer. So in other words, a lot of people jump in, a lot of back and forth, a lot of back and forth. All right. Okay. This is another person says, brother, we're going to disagree here. As a cop, she should have known the difference, accident, probable, going to jail for that mistake. Yes. Other folk have gone to jail for accidental discharges. He's saying, hey, the cop who accidentally grabbed the gun instead of the taser should have known the difference. It says for the Capitol shooting justified, yes, the video of it attest. So they're saying, so he's saying, hey, the woman made a mistake. Maybe she made a mistake, grabbed the taser instead of the gun by accident, but people have gone to jail for an accidental, police officers have been charged for an accidental discharge of the weapon. But does that justify what happened in the Capitol? Well, the Capitol shooting was justified, according to this person. He's saying, look at the video of the Capitol shooting. It was justified because she had broken in and was trying to get into a barricaded room. All right. Well, whether you want to say it's justified or not justified, again, both, if you want to say both were doing something wrong, well, then both ended up shot and killed. So why is one justified and one not justified? Because of the color of skin? How do we look at this? Someone says, it's disappointing to see you trumpeting political talking points instead of gospel truth. Ashley Babbitt was part of a group breaking through the windows on a barricaded door in a government building. There's no real comparison. One cop did their job honorably and the other did not. Beyond all of this, another person jumps in. Congress has not required the U.S. Capitol Police to follow the same public reporting or transparency protocols that govern most large municipal police forces, like its neighbor, the Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Police Department. So he's saying maybe one of the reasons the name hasn't been released is the Capitol Police are under no obligation to release the name, where the police departments in cities are told to release the name of the officer involved in a shooting. So it has nothing to do with some double standard. It may have something to do with simply the rules regulating which police force has to do what. That's why we know the officer who killed Dante Brown and not the one who killed Ashley Babbitt. While D.C. police are required by law to release the names of officers involved in deaths or seriously use of force within 5 days of the incident, the Capitol Police Force is not. They have often chosen to withhold that information in previous cases. This is no evidence of societal double standard. May I recommend actually looking into why you don't know his name rather than being emotional and charging it up to double standards. Right off the bat, just because it agrees with you. I expect more intellectual honesty from you, to be honest. But there you have it. I mean, even within Christianity, we find these standards. Oh, look, Ashley Babbitt. She was killed. Nobody cares. I've even heard this on Christian radio. Nobody seems to care. We don't even know the name of that police officer. We don't even. And you know why Christians are saying that? Because they're getting it from Tucker Carlson. Tucker Carlson has become the preacher to Christians. Tucker Carlson is not your preacher. Tucker Carlson is not giving you a biblical way of thinking. Stop with that. There may be reasons why we don't know the name of the police officer who shot Ashley Babbitt. There may be actual legitimate reasons. I would have to look into the reasons stated there. But if that is true, then that explains it. And not only that, why are you going to try to make it sound like she was just the Air Force veteran not doing anything wrong and the black man who was shot and killed was resisting and fleeing? Well, let's consider so much. He was resisting and fleeing, so he wasn't trying to. He was trying to get away, not trying to put anyone in immediate danger. They already, I think, at that point in that shooting, we could get into some of the details. I think they already had his license and knew who he was, and they obviously had the license plates of the car. They had everything. So even if he would have gotten away, they could have followed him. They know where he lives. They probably at some point could have been able to pick him up for the warrant that they were trying to arrest him on. I'm not saying that is wonderful that he was trying to resist and flee. I'm not trying to say that. I'm just saying that there's other factors there as well. And there's other factors in the shooting of Ashley Babbitt. She broke into the Capitol building trying to get into a barricaded room. Those have to be considered too. Why are you going to overlook that in her shooting and then focus on, well, that person there did that? That's narrative speaking. That's not Christianity. That's not speaking truth. But again, I'm just going to read this quote from Dr. James White because it's just so It's just so crazy. We know the identity of the female cop who shot the fleeing, resisting black man. Won't give his name, doesn't give a name. Now, maybe at the time he tweeted this, the name of the individual wasn't given or wasn't known yet. I will give him the benefit of the doubt. 9:44 p.m. on April the 14th, I'd have to go look and see if their news had already reported the name of the person who was shot. I'd have to go look. But hey, so we don't know the name. We already know. So we know the name of the cop, but we don't, but we don't know the name of the cop who shot Ashley Babbitt. But just again, please note. So he's the fleeing, resisting black man who was mistakenly shot. It was an accident that he was shot. We don't know the identity of the cop who killed the Air Force veteran, Ashley Babbitt, purposefully with a gun. So she was shot on purpose. The African-American was shot by accident. And somehow there's some double standard. It's just, that's what happens within Christianity. It's always like, we just got to take a side. We got to take a side. Hey, the cop was right to do it. The cop was right. We got to justify the cop. Are we going to condemn the victim? We got to condemn the victim. And maybe sometimes, here's a thought. Maybe we don't need to justify or condemn anyone. We just say, here's what we know. Here are all the facts. Here are all the details. And you know who's ultimately going to have to make the determination? The legal system. Now, we may want to make a moral judgment. We may have to make a moral judgment. But we make that moral judgment not based off what Tucker Carlson is saying on Fox News, not what they're saying on conservative radio. We make that judgment based off, here are the facts, here's what we know, and here's what we can say. We have to think so much differently about this. We have to think, we've got to do better. We've got to do better within Christianity. We've got to do better. Everyone creates these narratives. I don't even know how many times I can say it. We've got to stop that. Last night, I saw the horrible video of what happened in Chicago with the 13-year-old. Now, there's so many factors to that. I said I don't want to get into too many specifics, but you can watch the video of this one. It's just horrific. They get called to the scene. Someone has a gun. Shots fired. They show up. I guess there's two individuals. One officer starts chasing the 13-year-old. Appears to have a gun in his hand. He runs. Police officers yelling at him to stop, throwing some, using some strong language. The 13-year-old stops, turns, and raises his hands. It's all a blur. Boom, the police officer shoots him, and he dies. Now, from other camera angles, it appears he definitely had a gun in his hand, and it appears that he just had tossed the gun, and then he turned and raised his hands. Now, the police officer told him to stop and raise his hands. He did stop and raise his hands, but obviously the police officer was obviously somewhere in there thought that the person still had the gun in their hand. He didn't see him toss the gun. So when the person turned towards him and started raising the hand, obviously he thought the person still had the gun in his hand and shot him. It was at 2:30 in the morning, I believe, in a dark alley. And so there was a lot of things, a lot of factors there. I'm not saying it justifies the shooting. I'm just saying that you have to look at all the facts. That's all I'm saying. I guess what I'm trying to show you is that, like, with that, and I've seen already videos of people breaking it down frame by frame, stopping it, going, see the gun, frame, stop, see. I mean, and when you're slowing it down that much, man, you can make all kinds. And even for the photograph, for the artwork for this podcast episode. The photograph is of the 13-year-old holding up his hands in that alley. You can see it. That's right before he is shot, or maybe the bullet had already been fired. You'd have to try to time it all out. But the point is, that's the image everyone's going to see. He got shot with having both hands up as a 13-year-old kid. He posed no threat, but he was running away with a gun. So in other words, some are going to focus on the fact he had a gun. Why was he running from the police? Why was he there at 2:30 in the morning? Those are all questions that need to be asked, right? Why did the cop shoot? His hands were up and not raised. That's a question that has to be asked. Did the police officer still think he had the gun in his hands? Probably. Did race come into play? I doubt race had anything to do with it. The cop was probably worried about being shot. Does that justify it? Not saying it justifies. Is it an easy job? Not saying it's an easy job. I don't know. I can sit there and look at that all day, and we can debate and debate and debate and debate and debate. All we can do is say, what are the facts? What is the truth? And ultimately, what is your opinion? What's my opinion? Well, our opinion ultimately becomes nothing. The legal system. Now, if we believe that it's an unjust shooting, and that the court system is unjust, then yes, I guess we could peacefully protest. You can try to contact, government officials to open up a different investigation into it. You can definitely do those kinds of things. But so much of it is we just talk, trying to explain, and we don't really know. And it just comes down to these narratives. And we've got to stop with that. Please don't fall for that game. Just remember, you're the Christian. You're the Christian in it. You're the one who's got to look at it. You need to bring salt. You need to be salt and light. You need to bring clarification. You need to bring calm. You need to try to bring truth to the situation. And what you want to demonstrate is that what you care most about is that someone was killed, not about trying to win an argument or winning a debate. April 14th, I think the shooting that he's referring to there, I think it just happened. Okay, maybe it happened on April the 13th, or maybe April the 12th. Maybe the 12th or the 13th is when the shooting occurred. And then already it's like double standard. I mean, give it some time for everything to play out. Give everything some time. But no, because they gave the name of the police officer. And we don't have it in the Capitol shooting. Well, wait a minute. Maybe the police officer in the shooting here, maybe that police force, that by a law, they have to give the name of a police officer involved in an officer-related shooting within 5 days. So therefore, why are you shocked that we know the name? Look into it. Get your evidence. I mean, Dr. James White is an apologist who's known for debating. Get your facts. Get your information. That's why social media is so dangerous, because even very intellectual, smart men who can debate and really do very good with information and evidence, when it comes to social media, you can't stop your finger from moving before your brain gets engaged. And next thing you know, boom, you're hitting send. To create something that dehumanizes the man who was shot. He's just a black man who was trying to flee and resist. And then you elevate the white woman who was shot as an Air Force veteran, and you completely leave out the fact that she had broken into the Capitol and was trying to get into a barricaded room. Why would you do that? Does that not show a double standard? Does that not show bias? Because you're looking at it through the lens of a narrative. Man, Christians, and white Christians. Well, I'm going to speak to us. We got to make sure that we have at least try to understand and sensitive to what African Americans experience and go through. I can't relate to it. Again, one of the individuals in our church, African American, and whenever he tells me about his experiences in Chicago and New York, some of his experiences, I'm like, what? That happened? Like, it's hard for me to are you telling me, is that real? It opens my eyes. So listen to other people's experiences. And you know what? Look, I don't want the police to have to shoot anyone. I can tell you that. I don't want anyone to die. But at the same time, sometimes I understand that the police have to do what's necessary in order to protect. There's so many factors going in here, so many layers. So I don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. I'm very tired. I'm just and when I say that, I'm mentally exhausted about just whenever these shootings occur. It just feels like it's just the same thing over and over. Shooting happens. Everyone runs to their side. Everyone has their narrative. Yell, 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 yell. The person's dead. Well, nobody even really cares about the person who died. Now everyone just cares about their side, their political perspective, their narrative, and they want to win a debate. And in the meantime, a person is dead. And then that debate ends and everyone's moved on to the next debate. And guess what happens? That family is still without a father, a brother, sister, whatever. But we really don't, do we really care about the people who died, or do we just care about our side? Do we just care about our side? And I've seen it here, even in local businesses. There will be a questionable police shooting. I mean, something like, ooh, that looks horrible. That looks horrible. That looks like the police is definitely in the wrong here. And it'll be like 3 seconds. Local businesses here, we support the police. I understand you support the police, but do you support the people who've been killed in an unjust way by the police? Can you support the police and support anyone who's been unjustly treated by the police? Can we not do both? Hey, look, when I see a police officer, I usually will walk up and say, thank you for what you do, because I truly believe and want to believe that police officer believes that he is there to protect and serve me. So I want to thank him. But you know what? Someone who's unjustly treated, someone who's treated in an unjust manner by the police, I want to support them as well and say what the police did to you was wrong. What the police did to your father was wrong. What the police did to your brother was wrong. And yeah, maybe your brother or father did something wrong in the past, but that doesn't justify what was done to them on that particular day. You can do both. We're not required to pick a side. We should pick the side of justice. We should pick the side of truth. We should pick the side of what is right. Sometimes cops are wrong. Sometimes cops are right. Sometimes the people who are shot by a cop are in the wrong. Sometimes the people who are shot by the cop, they are the victim. You know, a lot of people I heard, this person had a warrant out for their arrest. You don't want to get shot, don't have a warrant out for your arrest. Well, first of all, that's ridiculous. Just because you have a warrant for your arrest, you shouldn't be shot. When I joined the United States military and I was at the MEP Center going through all the basic stuff that you're supposed to do, all of a sudden they came in and said, you need to come with us. You have a warrant out for your arrest. And I was like, wait, what? Have a warrant out for my arrest? They didn't come in and shoot me. It was over some ticket. I can't remember all the stuff that happened. It was some crazy situation. But yeah, so I've had a warrant out for my arrest. Wasn't arrested. I just had to go take care of the ticket, and I can't remember I don't remember all the details now. It's a long time ago. But point is they didn't just come in and shoot me. So just having a warrant out for your arrest, it does. And if you're going to say, well, this person resisted, so they deserve to be shot. Well, what in the world? It was Ashley Babbitt trying to do, breaking into the Capitol building, trying to get into a barricaded room. Does not grounds for possible the authorized use of lethal force to stop them from getting in? Is that right or wrong? It's just crazy that now Ashley Babbitt is becoming like, look at her shooting. Nobody cares about her shooting. Nobody cares about who shot her. Nobody cares. What? First of all, the Ashley Babbitt shooting and any other shooting are separate shootings. They've got to be considered on the individual basis. But it's almost like white people looking for any reason to somehow, I don't know, justify any shooting a police officer does of an African-American individual. That's just wrong. I don't care about the race. I don't care. I just want to know the facts. What are the facts? Now, race may come into play because, again, you may be, some people talk about living in a neighborhood where the police never show up, and when they do, it's just to harass people. I can't speak of the validity of that. If that's true, that's going to change the way they interact with the police. That needs to be changed. I'm just trying to throw everything at this because there's just so many different perspectives. There's so many different layers. That's what I want to get across. All right, I'm just going to stop there because I'm just so frustrated. So frustrated that's what everyone's talking about right now is shooting and people dying and another mass shooting. And it's like, why? Why does this continue? Oh, I know why it continues because of human depravity and we live in a fallen world. But it's just, I guess what's so frustrating is because it turns into everyone fighting for a narrative instead of fighting for truth. All right, I'll stop right there. You can email me your thoughts, newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. Everyone have a great day. God bless.